Hi there, and welcome back to Heimler's History. In this lecture, we're going to talk economics, specifically the economic system that existed between Britain and her colonies, and how that economic system eventually led to a revolution. Let's do it.
It's time to kick it old school.
Alright, so this economic system was known as mercantilism, and it was the dominant economic theory in Europe until Adam Smith came preaching free market economics. Now, the most important thing you need to know about mercantilism is that it saw the world's wealth as like a giant pie. And the thing about pie is there's only so much to go around, which means that if I'm going to have more pie, you're going to have less. And if you're going to have more pie, I'm going to have less. And the British really liked pie. But so did the French, and so did the Dutch, and on. And because everybody liked pie so much, and who can blame them, they got into some pretty fierce arguments about who would get more pie than the other. Now, the other thing you need to know about pie world is that establishing colonies is a really good way to get more pie. After all, a country like Britain, whose landmass was relatively small, lacked a lot of natural resources. But if you set up a colony in another area of the world, let's say America, then that country has a lot more resources that you need and that you can import then to enrich your country. So if this sounds like the mother country wins out over the colony, you heard right. And the Americans saw all the pie that the British were eating and were like, we like pie. Can we have some pie? And the English were like, no pie for you. The only reason you exist is to get more pie for us. So the Americans were breaking their backs, shipping their raw materials off to England, who then made manufactured goods out of those raw materials and then sold them back to the American colonists, who were allowed by law only to buy from the English. So you can see that the Americans were not a big fan of this whole pie eating thing, and they began to complain loudly. And the English responded thusly: bub, bub, bub. If we're rich, everyone benefits. You're part of the empire. Pie for all! To which the Americans responded, yeah, that pie tastes like somebody took a big English dump on it. Is that inappropriate? Yeah, that's inappropriate. So the Americans figured out how to get their own slice of the pie, and they started smuggling. Now, there were laws in place at the time that forbid the Americans from trading with any other country except for Britain, but they figured out a way around that by grafting and bribing and then trading with anybody that they wanted. Now, you would think that the British Crown would put the boot down on such blatant disregard for its laws. But as it turned out, the English monarchs had a long history of salutary neglect, which means they looked the other way whenever the colonists were being naughty. They were all busy with their pies, and unlike Pizza the Hut, pies do not eat themselves. Then Charles II came to the throne and decided he was tired of these scrappy, dirty colonists flouting the parliamentary laws. So he decided to clamp down and start enforcing these laws. Most egregious of these laws were the navigation laws, which, as I mentioned before, restricted trade from the colonies to the mother country. So King Charles cuts off all the smuggling and therefore cripples the American economy. And that's when America gave old Charles the stink eye and said, you've left us alone for all these years, and now all of a sudden you're clamping down and enforcing the rules? Psh, King, please. And part of what gave the Americans the chutzpah to act so antagonistically to their mother country was the Great Awakening. One of the effects of the Great Awakening was to erode people's confidence in Puritan authority. And it's only a small step from doubting one kind of authority to doubting another kind of authority. And since we're talking about what gave Americans this attitude, I should probably mention the Enlightenment. Now, there's a lot about the Enlightenment that we don't have time to talk about here, but the important thing is to know that ideas about individual liberties and a deep suspicion of the divine right of kings made their way across the Atlantic and became deeply rooted in the American conscience. Hence, stink eye. Now, I'll just leave you in that tension for now, but as you can see, if these resentments aren't addressed, something bad is going to happen. What's going to happen? I don't know, but I bet it has something to do with an epic transatlantic pie eating contest. If only. I'll see you next time.